story with you about their summer adventure. But introducing them tonight is none other than Senior Peter Schmidt, and let's welcome Peter to the stage.
Hey everybody, how's it going? We get to go camping tomorrow. How exciting is that? I feel like camping's a really nice chance to go outside, look inward, and have some awesome adventures with friends. And I'd like to welcome to the stage 3 awesome campers and even awesomer friends who had one such adventure this summer, Liam, Luke, and Ronan. And while work unfortunately kept me from joining them, I've loved hearing every word of their stories, and I'm so happy you guys get to too. Let's bring them up here.
So, 19 days ago, or six days ago, excuse me, it was day 19 of our trip, and we sat down, we hiked 10 hours, and it was about noon, and we sat down to write this presentation, and we got out our pocket knife and started sharpening the pencil, and pulled out the notebook to tell you guys about the adventure that we've had this past month. So I'm Ronan. I'm a day student here. I live in Ojai.
I'm Luke Leasure, and I am from Darien, Connecticut.
I'm Liam Kirkpatrick, and I'm from Queenstown, New Zealand. And we're all seniors. So, the 3 of us, it was about a year and a half ago, and we decided we wanted to go on an adventure together as 3 friends, and we started talking about where we wanted to go. And we decided the Sierras was the mountain range we'd like to visit, and in particular we wanted to do the John Muir Trail, which starts up in Yosemite, and it comes all the way down to the summit of Mount Whitney. It kind of tours the highlights of the Sierras. It sees some incredible mountain passes, some just pristine lakes, some awesome terrain in general. So we actually started a little bit into the trail right at the high point up there, and we went a little bit further south from Mount Whitney and ended up at the Horseshoe Meadows Trailhead, where all the freshmen will be going tomorrow.
So to ensure the success of a 21-day trip, a tremendous amount of planning is required. If you're planning on hiking the John Muir Trail from north to south, you first need to apply to get a permit. You do this by sending in a permit application to the Yosemite National Park. Unfortunately, because so many people want to hike the John Muir Trail, there's only a 3% chance of successfully getting a permit. Also, the Park Service is very strict with how you can apply, and they require you to send in your application form exactly 168 days in advance. If you're a day early or a day late, your permit request will be denied. So we sent in our permit requests for 4 separate start dates, those being August 1st through August 4th. Also, if you look on the permit application form that we sent in, you'll see that the number of people is 4 at this time. At that point, we were still planning on having Peter Schmidt join us. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. So, after 3 consecutive days of sending in our application form, we were denied on each and every one of those days. However, on February 18th, I was sitting in Mr. Sanchez's Spanish class, and I received the following email from the Yosemite National Park stating that I had successfully received a permit to hike the John Muir Trail. So this was really the point where our aspiration of hiking this trail became a reality. Going into it, we knew 3% chance. Let's just send in the permit form and see what happens. Maybe we can do the trip. But once we did get this permit, we were able to now go more in depth into the planning process, and now we weren't just hoping to do the trip, we were actually going to do it. So from about the middle of February until the end of the school year, we spent nearly every Sunday afternoon in room C for about an hour, going through all the different things that need to be planned. We created this Google spreadsheet and titled it the John Muir Trail Master Plan, and it really had everything you needed to know about our trip on it. We shared it with our parents, and they read through it thoroughly, and fortunately it was so thorough that they didn't really have many questions for us. But yeah, it really had everything you needed to know, like that night's campsite, how many miles we were planning on hiking that day, what we were going to eat, how difficult the day would be, and really any notes about the trip.
So a couple days before we started, Luke and Liam both flew out to my house, and when they arrived, we ate a disgusting amount of food. One morning, we made some pancakes, and once we were full, my mom walked in and she had eggs and croissants and donuts. But it ended up being great, and later on that day, of course, we were still eating like chili burgers and stuff. But once we arrived in Yosemite, we went to a communal camping site. It was a little bit late, so we just camped there with a bunch of other backpackers, and then the next morning we started on our way. So one of the things that we brought along was a fishing rod, a fly fishing rod. And I think I've never fished before this trip, but these two guys are experienced fishermen, so they taught me how, and it was a really great addition to the trip. One of the best moments was I've been fishing for a while, and I hadn't caught anything, and Luke had come over, so I figured maybe I'll give him a turn. And so he came over, and so he put out his first cast, and he's getting ready. He has this little like weird butt wag where he like throws out the line. He's like, so he's watching his fish. His fish comes up and is about to go for the hook. And so he's really excited. He's ready to set the hook. And he, right when the fish grabs it, he gets it perfect timing, and he pulls the fish and it flies 10 feet behind him. It was just like this little 4-inch fish. But really, fishing was one of the most fun activities that we had, and provided some good laughs like that. So, yeah, it was just a great addition. So.
In addition to fishing, we spent a lot of time messing around with the hacky sack. We had two with us. And this is probably the most insane hacky sack moment I've ever seen. Luke goes for it, he kind of gets it, and goes down on one knee, and it lands behind here and catches it. It's pretty spectacular. I don't think he meant to, but it was awesome. So it's kind of part of the philosophy of our trip is that we're not going to panic about covering the miles. If we want to go and hacky sack for an hour after lunch, we did. And it made it really fun, and we had a great time. In a complete change of pace, I'm going to step into my advice student role here. Those of you who have taken advice might recognize this. These are the Devil's Post Pies. They're behind Mammoth, and only a couple miles off the John Muir Trail, so we decided to go down and check them out. It's this rock formation that forms when you get magma basalt, and it cools, and it cracks in these 120-degree cracks, so it forms hexagonal pillars, like you can see there. And this is perhaps the best example of this columnar basalt in the world. So we were really stoked to go down and check it out, even though we could not climb on it, which is kind of a bummer.
So, also on day 3 of the trip, the John Muir Trail brings us near this place called the Reds Meadow Campground Resort. And in the previous couple of days, every single hiker that we passed would say, "Oh, are you heading to the grill at Reds Meadow? Man, I could totally go for a bacon cheeseburger right now." And so we knew that that this campground existed, but everyone was talking it up so much, we thought it was some big prank that all the hikers were trying to pull on us. But indeed, on the map, there was marked a Reds Meadow Campground Resort, so we did decide to pay it a visit. Wherever there's food, you'll want to go. So we did stop by the resort. We walked into this little cafe, and there we sat down, and each of us had a double bacon cheeseburger and a milkshake. It was quite good. So a few days later, we were on the John Muir Trail, and we actually passed Connor and Spencer McCune. So we knew they were hiking the John Muir Trail, but we didn't think we'd run into each other in the middle of the wilderness. So they were heading northbound, and we talked with them for the better part of an hour, and towards the end of our conversation, we started talking about the Reds Meadow Resort. Unfortunately, they said they didn't have any money with them, and wouldn't be able to purchase any food. So we lent them $40. We knew how good the food was, and Connor, I'm pretty sure you still owe us some money. So from then, we split off with the McCunes and went to that night's campground at Papoose Lake. And as you can see, it's situated right beneath this pretty beautiful peak over there. We knew that the next day's hike would bring us up and over a pass that would go right behind that peak. So we decided, why don't we do a little side hike and go up to the summit? Now, most people along the John Muir Trail are only really focused on getting from point A to point B. They only really want to rack up as much mileage as possible and come home and tell all their friends that they did the John Muir Trail. They are not too focused on actually experiencing the terrain. However, by doing this little side hike and just getting a couple miles off the trail, we were able to really get that sense of adventure that we were going for. Also, the view from the summit down on the prior night's campground was absolutely spectacular, as it's just a sheer cliff that probably dropped off maybe 20 or 30 yards.
So another amazing place recommended to us by Mr. Spalding was the Ivabel Hot Springs. And once we arrived in camp, we hiked up this little slope, or maybe not so little, and we were camped down in the valley. And once you hike up just a little bit, there's these beautiful little hot springs. But if you keep going up and keep going up, you get to this hot tub, which Spaldo called the King's Hot Tub. And it looks out over the valley, and it's looking west, so the sun sets like right down the middle of it, and the water is like perfect 90-degree water. And sort of the point that we wanted to make here was that I don't think anybody could deny that this is not absolutely amazing. And so even if you don't like camping, we hope that you can go at camping with an open mind and sort of hope for things like this, that even if you don't like it, like generally, you will have some awesome experiences.
So this is all, so far, the first 7 days of our trip. And at this point, we're out of food, and we're really hungry. So we headed to this place called Vermilion Valley Resort. You're walking in, and I was reminded from the Odyssey of the land of the Lotus Eaters. And it's just this kind of place, really hard to leave. You walk up, and this guy comes out, he's like, "Hey, welcome. You got free drink, just go inside and get it. The restaurant's open, they make breakfast burritos, camping's over there, there's a shower." And so we witnessed a lot of hikers like us who planned to come for an hour or two and end up staying for a couple of days. Fortunately, we got out pretty quickly after 4 hours. We got a couple of meals. We also picked up our 2 resupply boxes that we mailed there, and it was absolutely awesome kind of breaking in and getting into the food that we packaged 4 months earlier. Seeing that we actually did plan relatively well, we didn't miss too much. A few days later, we were again looking for food. There's this spot called the Muir Trail Ranch, which sits about a mile below the trail. And we're going along, and we didn't necessarily need to go there, but we were pretty hungry, and we decided to go down and check it out. And it turns out they have these things called hiker boxes. So it was like 10 5-gallon buckets lined up in the shade. And every time a hiker came through and had too much food, or a resupply box was mailed there but didn't get picked up, they just dump it in the hiker boxes. So we went probably a little too crazy. We had about 10 Cliff Bars each for lunch, and loaded up our bear cans with a whole bunch more. Both Luke and I here are pictured kind of with the haul, and we're pretty stoked, so it's awesome.
So our second resupply was planned for the South Lake Trailhead, and to get there, this required us to hike 13 miles off the John Muir Trail, up into the Doozy Basin, over Bishop Pass, and down 7 miles to the trailhead. Now, the hike up to the Doozy Basin is absolutely miserable. It goes up about 3,000 vertical feet of climbing and a pretty short distance, and it feels like the switchbacks will never end. And the thing is, we three love to hike, but we were pretty miserable. But we did know, and many of the people we saw on the trail told us that, the Doozy Basin is the most spectacular place in the Sierras. And indeed, we thought it was, as the scenery was absolutely incredible. So we were okay with just that little bit of suffering, as it was well worth the reward of such an awesome campsite and an incredible scenery.
So the next day, we're on to our next resupply, and we were a day ahead of schedule because we had decided to take our layover day a little bit later in the trip. So we were, Mr. Spaulding was we were expecting him to drop off our resupply for the day after that we decided to head out. So we were hoping that maybe he had dropped it off early, but on the way hiking out, we heard of a fire at Horseshoe Meadows Trailhead, which is where Golden Trout is. So that's where he had been keeping our food, and he was just going to drop it off maybe the day before or the day of. We weren't really sure exactly when he was going to drop it off. So of course we hike out to the trailhead, and our food's not there. So we're thinking, what are we going to do now? So we had two sort of main options. We could wait there and hopefully our food would arrive, or we could hitchhike into town and get phone service and try and figure out this whole situation. So we decided to hitchhike out, and so we started walking down the road.
And for those of you who have been to the eastern side of the Sierras in the summer, or freshmen who are about to go up there, it is pretty miserable. It's hot. The Sierras itself is awesome, but you get down into the valley below, and I'm not a fan of the summer. So we're walking down the road, and we're hot, and eventually the cars are just going past us every couple minutes, and nobody's stopping. And then it's a pretty new Mercedes SUV with white leather seats that stops, and we're filthy, but we get in, and the guy's like, "Hi, I only do fall colors." And we had no idea what that meant. It turns out he drives up and down the Sierras and documents the fall colors. So he writes about, aspens and mammoth are doing this week. He's got 90,000 followers online, so check him out. He was totally awesome, and eventually we get down to coverage, and we decided not to go all the way to town, so we just got out on the side of the road, called our parents. I got in touch with my roommate Steven, who'd been up at Golden Trout, and with Mr. Piddick, and both of them said that the road to Golden Trout was closed. So we started thinking, all right, even if the food was supposed to be dropped off later, it's probably not going to make it. And that's when we decided to head into town. It may look like Luke is about to drop the hottest next rap album, but in fact he was showing off the massive hole in his pants, which he's not too stoked about to bring into town. So again, we started hitchhiking, and it was not as effective. We were just sitting there for quite a while in the heat. And then eventually this cowboy drives up in his old red pickup truck, and he's got 3 hitchhikers with him in the cab. He's like, "All right, guys, I can't put you in the cab, but there's room in the back." So we all jump in the back of the pickup, and we're lying down so cops can't see us. As we drive past the police station into town. And it worked. It wasn't ideal. We prefer to do it other ways, but in that situation, we didn't really have any other choices, so we had to go with it.
Yeah, so we arrived in Bishop, and we're a little bit worried, are we going to have to call the trip off? Do we have to call our parents, tell them we need a ride? How do we figure this out? So as opposed to calling the people who could have helped us with our resupply, our first priority was to get some more food. So we went to the local Mexican restaurant, and all three of us ordered what they called the super burrito. We talked a good bit with the waiter there, and he was pretty interested in our trip. So after enjoying this massive meal, we went outside onto the sidewalk right outside the restaurant. And for about 3 hours, we tried to call a bunch of different people who could help us with our resupply. Over the course of those 3 hours, that same waiter came outside to take a smoke, and every time he saw us, he was pretty surprised that we were still sitting outside of his restaurant. The third time he came out, he actually handed us a business card for the local search and rescue. So clearly he didn't have much faith in us. But fortunately, we did manage to get in contact with someone who said that earlier that day, around noon, right when we were eating that super burrito, they had dropped off the resupply at the trailhead. So we were pretty stoked on that. We knew that the resupply was up at the trailhead, but the next obstacle would be finding a ride back up. So the first thing we did was go to the local gas station, and Liam did a good job of walking around to every car that pulled up and offering them $20 to give us a ride up to the trailhead. None of them accepted. Instead, they offered him money, and I'm not sure if it was his rugged beard or the massive hole in my pants. But I'm pretty sure they thought we were homeless. So the gas station was a bust, but it's another opportunity to get some more food. So we bought 2 massive bags of burritos and a gallon jug of water per person to stay hydrated. Freshmen take notes, you gotta drink that water. And then we ended up chilling in the local high school.
At this point, we'd actually come up with something that halfway resembled a plan. There was a resort up near the trailhead, and they said they'd drive us up for $80 at 6 o'clock. And we had no other options. The gas station didn't work. I walked around town and went to all the sports stores, and no one would give me a ride. I did. Any climbers out there? I was crossing the street, and this guy drives up in a van, and I kind of stepped, and he stopped, and then I went, and he stopped. It was Alex Honnold in the van. So, a couple people know. He's a totally awesome climber. He does huge, big walls without a rope. It was a wild day. Things like that kept happening. You're like, is this real? So we're at high school watching 7-year-olds practice football. A couple hours. I guess we look kind of sketchy. The school custodian walks over and starts talking to us. She's a fantastic lady named Sue. And she's a school bus driver too. And she wants to know about our trip and why we're at Bishop, sitting on the edge of the soccer field. And we eventually head back over to the gas station because it's almost 6. And we're hoping that this van's going to show up. And by 6:10, we still had no van and no ride. So then Sue drives by. And she rolls down the window and she's like, I've got no gas, but if you give me a couple bucks, I'll get you up to the trailhead. And so we jump in with Sue, and it was wonderful. We were pretty tired at that point, and we've been stressed out for a little while. And to just have someone step in and help us out like that was out of this world, and really, really nice. Thank you, Sue.
So once we had arrived at
Here's the hole.
that's the hole in this When we arrived at the trailhead, of course, our food was there, and we were super happy. We had canned peaches. We hadn't had fruit in 2 weeks. So it was amazing. We opened these cans of chili, and it was getting late, so we hiked through the night up over Bishop Pass, and it was absolutely beautiful. We had a full moon, and we got into camp at midnight and had dinner and went to bed. On the same note of passes, we have some pictures of most of the passes that we went over. This year is Selden Pass, overlooking Mary Lake. It was absolutely beautiful. This was where we slept the night before Muir Pass, which has this awesome hut at the top for people who are looking to weather the night when the sky is not that blue. And we just took a quick team photo. We spent some time up at the top of Muir Pass because it was so beautiful. And here, this was Mather Pass, and it was day 15. It was Luke's final push-up moments. Yeah, so he had a while without push-ups. That's why he looks so small right now. And later that evening, we hiked up Pinchot Pass, and the sun was setting, and we had this beautiful view. And it was just a great time, and we hiked in late at night to a campsite. And the biggest pass of our trip was Forester Pass, which is absolutely fantastic because we had these sheer cliffs like along the trail, and it provided this cool view as well. But you could just look down like a couple thousand feet maybe, and like just near straight down in this beautiful trail just cut along the mountain. So that was one of the highlights for sure.
So to feed 3 teenage boys who are hiking many miles each day, you need lots and lots of food. So the following are some images of some of our pretty creative combinations and creations in order to get as many calories as we could.
So at Vermilion Mountain Resort, we had picked up some sugar donuts, and by the time we got there to Muir Pass where we ate them, they were complete powder. I had smashed them in the bear can, but they still ended up tasting really good.
I am pictured here with some of the food from one ration. We found that dehydrated ground beef is pretty cheap, and it tastes absolutely incredible. So we're eating beef on just about everything. That's the bag on the left. And on the right we had oatmeal, which we also had a lot of. But perhaps my favorite part of this is we had given ourselves a whole bunch of candy, M&Ms and Skittles. So we broke into the box after that really long day where we were hitchhiking, and there was just candy waiting for us. It's pretty spectacular.
So every morning for breakfast, we'd have either granola or oatmeal with raisins, brown sugar, and cinnamon. But we didn't think this was caloric enough for us, so we would also add a massive tablespoon of peanut butter to every breakfast.
So when I was eating my peanut butter, I decided to take my Cliff Bars and like scoop out the peanut butter, just to eat the peanut butter off of the bar.
I was a little bit less civilized. I tended to eat it straight from the jar, especially by the end of the trip. It tasted awesome. Each large spoonful of peanut butter is as many calories as a Cliff Bar. That was our big realization. Pictured here are 2 of the meals that we were pretty proud of coming up with by the end of the trip. We had a pesto pasta. We found powdered pesto pasta, and we ate it with dehydrated ground beef and olive oil. It was a really, really great meal. We also had beans, rice, and more dehydrated ground beef with some taco spice, which, again, was a really lightweight meal that we found really filling and tasty.
And at Muir Trail Ranch, which we mentioned earlier, we found this package of Velveeta cheese. For those of you that don't know, it's like liquid cheese. It wasn't ours, but we took it anyways. It was in the hiker boxes. But we had this double cheese mac and cheese dinner. It was totally not good for you, but it tasted great.
And like many of you, I'm sure will be doing in 6 days' time, we finished up the trip at In-N-Out. I counted 2,600 calories, followed by a dinner 2 hours later. Absolutely spectacular. That's awesome. So we're going to rewind a bit and go back to Forester Pass, that big pass with the cliffs. And for a couple days at that point, we've been noticing clouds start to build up in the afternoons, which is something you see a lot in the mountains. And you always are worried about thunderstorms kind of building out of these clouds in the afternoon. So when we're up on Forester Pass, we decided that we would push a little bit further that day, get ourselves a day ahead, and give ourselves flexibility in case storms started coming in, which they indeed did. So we ended up at Ranger Station, Crabtree Meadow, and we walk up to the ranger station because we wanted to figure out the weather. We're going off trail for the rest of the trip, so we wanted to talk to the ranger about our route. And the ranger wasn't there, but there was this guy kind of sleeping on the porch. He woke up as we walked up, and he got all his maps out and was showing us the route and helping us out and talking about, yeah, you go around this side of the lake and go up from here, there's a big rock, follow that. It was absolutely incredible. And then Ranger Rob himself walked up. And Ranger Rob is good friends with Mr. Spalding. So once we figured out that connection, he was super nice, and he ended up walking us a good portion of the way around to Crabtree Lakes, where we were spending the night. He's kind of showing us his little secret shortcut. So it was pretty incredible to just get that amount of help from two people that we didn't know, who didn't need to help us, but who were just so excited to give us a hand that they really made our trip a whole lot easier. And so at that point, the John Muir Trail itself went up and we went by this lake called Guitar Lake, shaped like a guitar. And then it goes up the trail to Whitney, and we decided not to take that route. The Whitney portal sees 20,000 visitors every year. It's an exceptionally crowded piece of backcountry. So instead we went up to the Crabtree Lakes, which are tucked around the corner, and we had the entire valley to ourselves, which was awesome. And as well as one of the best sunsets of the trip. With all the smoke in the sky, sunsets were just incredibly orange like this, so it was pretty cool.
So the next day was day 19, and day 19 was the day where we hoped to summit Mount Whitney. We knew that we were right in the middle of a 4-day period of some pretty bad weather with afternoon thunderstorms. So we wanted to do all that we could to maximize our chances of getting that summit in. So what we did was called an alpine start. And what an alpine start is you get up very early in the morning, hike the mountain in the dark, summit just for sunrise, then come back down before the afternoon thunderstorms hit. So we were pretty stoked on this idea. So we got up just a little bit earlier at 1 in the morning and began our hike up the Crabtree Basin. That was a little bit more difficult than we expected because it was the middle of the night. But what we found ourselves doing was traversing some pretty steep cliffs and some pretty big rocks, and made for some pretty slow travel. Then the next part of the hike up was up the Discovery Pinnacle, and we found that terrain to be absolutely miserable, as it was either really loose sand or really loose rocks, none of which you really like to hike on. But we're all about adventure, so it still made that day pretty fun. So at the top of Discovery Pinnacle, we merged back with the Mount Whitney Trail and finished the remaining 2 miles of the hike to the summit. We were there just in time for sunrise, and it was absolutely beautiful. However, there were already about 40 people on the summit, and we didn't really like the crowd because we were in it for the wilderness experience. So we decided to descend the mountain after only about 30 minutes on the summit, and also to avoid the afternoon thunderstorms.
So later that day, about 6 a.m., we climbed up Mount Muir, which is just a shoulder off of Mount Whitney. It's also a 14,000 foot peak, but there's near nobody on it. Mostly because it's a little bit scary. But it ended up being a great experience. There were some drop-offs to the sides, and could have fallen, but we didn't. So, and then later we just hiked down from where we came back down to our stuff, and because of how we had hiked up, it was all sand, so we ended up just running down these sand chutes. It was awesome, but later that day when the storm clouds were moving in, we were rushing to get to our campsite, and there are all these big rocks that have sort of drop-offs, so we were As the storm clouds were moving in, we were throwing our packs down and jumping down to get out of the rocky, barren areas and into a safer spot in case thunder and lightning were coming and to avoid the thunderstorms. But it ended up being a great day, and we got into camp by about noon.
And so that